What do we know about football?
La Ligue des Champions.
The Champions League,
Le montant des transferts.
rising transfer fees, cheering from the stands,
La violence.
violence,
Le business.
big business.
Vous avez raison, c'est
You're
ça
right.
aussi, il faut.
That's all part of the game.
Et moi, je vais vous
But
parler.
I'm going to talk about something else.
Je vais vous parler des
I'm going to talk about true values,
des hommes.
about the men.
Los militares. En
In
1939,
1939,
mes grands-parents fuient
my
l'Espagne
grandparents fled Spain
et la dictature de
and
Franco.
Franco's dictatorship.
40 ans plus tard,
40 years later, the people of Chile went through the same thing.
Salvador Allende,
Salvador Allende embodied the dream of the people.
Pinochet et ses hommes l'ont tué.
Pinochet and his henchmen killed him.
Toujours la même chose.
Always the same thing.
La même
The
lâcheté,
same cowardice,
la même violence.
the same violence.
À cette époque,
Back then, a man, a footballer, resisted
et il a payé.
and paid for it.
Carlos Caselli,
Carlos Caselli,
Chili,
Chile,
1973.
1973.
Muy bien, bravo. Muy bien.
Fue una época maravillosa, yo diría que
It was a marvelous time,
por la juventud,
especially for the youth.
que uno lograba
We managed to achieve amazing things.
todo el mundo-
There was no power struggle. It was more a case of love.
Había más amor. Había más amor. En esa época se trabajaba
Back then,
con
our country was bubbling.
en nuestro país.
It was really convivial,
mucha convivencia, de mucho
full of
amiga,
friendships,
abrazo, amor,
hugs,
beso,
love,
flor,
kisses, flowers,
fue muy bonito,
peace.
muy bonito.
It was very
Llegó el
wonderful
73,
until the coup d'etat of 73, and then it was finished.
De septiembre de 1973. Cayó la noche sobre nuestro pequeño país. Larga noche de dolor. Larga noche
Y ahí
de
se
muerte.
sentía alguna
Then we heard on the radio,
y ahora
newsflash,
se-
planes are bombing the presidential palace.
se recibía-
We thought, what's going on?
Hasta el extremo
No, no lo
We couldn't
podíamos
believe
creer,
it.
no lo podíamos creer.
We didn't understand.
Era posible.
How was a coup d'etat
un
possible?
golpe que un ser humano.
How could one man kill another, one brother kill another?
Fue un día tremendamente triste. Yo
It was a terribly sad day. I remember it was a cloudy day and very cold.
Yo no voy a renunciar. Colocado en un tránsito histórico, pagaré con mi vida la lealtad del pueblo.
De que se acabó,
That's how it ended,
eso y más aún cuando
especially when
murió
Allende
Fidel,
was
o sea,
killed.
Entonces fue como...
It was
como
like the
que-
sky
como que el
had
cielo se
suddenly
había puesto
turned black.
Negro, así como que...
No vamos a olvidar nunca jamás.
We'll never forget it.
Y eso puede significar para que
We must make
todo
every
sea
effort
posible
for it to never happen again in Chile.
Fue una
It was a
tragedia
terrible
terrible,
tragedy.
de la que
Many
muchísimas
families have
familias
yet to
no
recover
logran
from it.
recuperarse.
La junte militaire portée par le coup d'État a décidé de rassembler les opposants de gauche dans le stade national de Santiago du Chili. Près de 12 000 personnes seraient déjà détenues dans ce stade. Personne ne sait exactement comment sont traités les prisonniers. Les représentants de l'église chilienne se disent très inquiets.
Estamos en el más importante.
This is the country's biggest sporting arena,
Estamos en
the
el
National
estadio
Stadium of Santiago.
donde aquí yo tengo un puñado de recuerdos,
I have a stack of memories about this place, good and
de
bad.
los buenos y de los malos. Y aquí estuve preso.
I was held prisoner here.
Increíble.
It's incredible. It's incredible the way they profaned the stadium.
Y dormíamos nosotros.
We slept underneath this
bajo la
stand.
tribuna. Se llamaban escotillas. Y de ahí tirábamos.
We
una
called it
frazada
the
y
hatch.
dormíamos ahí. Y bajo
We
la
slept
ducha
with just a blanket,
de agua fría,
and we took one shower a week
una vez a la
in
semana.
icy water.
Fue un momento de mucha
It was a time of huge uncertainty.
incertidumbre. No
We didn't know what our
sabíamos
fate would be.
cuál iba a ser nuestro destino. Algunos
Some
compañeros
people were taken for
que salieron del
interrogation
observatorio nunca
and never
más volvieron,
returned.
pues aquí había
Many
gente
of
que
us
no
were
tenía
complete
luz.
strangers.
Pero como
But we all had
estábamos
one thing in
buscando
common.
común denominador, estábamos por algo muy común.
We were supporters
por
of
haber
popular
sido
unity.
popular, por
We had
haber
backed
sido
Salvador Allende.
seguidores de Salvador Allende. Y llamaban
When
al
they
interrogatorio,
took you for interrogation,
y de aquí
they put a blanket over your head so you couldn't see anything.
para que tú no vieras nada.
You just followed the person in front of you. You lost all notion of space. You had no idea if you were being interrogated at the velodrome or the stadium.
Hacia el velódromo. Yo no sé
I
si-
don't remember any interrogation without torture.
Yo recuerdo haber salido bastante
I came out mentally
satisfecho, anímico,
and physically exhausted.
del interrogatorio.
The repression was brutal.
Hay una mezcla increíble.
This place holds an incredible mixture of memories. All the wonderful experiences in the locker rooms up until 1973. And then after, it became a concentration camp. According to what I've read and heard, there were murders and rapes in the locker rooms. Lots of things are mixed up. Sadness, pain, and the joy of a goal. I think we must be careful. History is everywhere here. A history we must remember so it can never repeat itself.
Tarnish a stadium. Turn it into a concentration camp. Torture. Murder. Then carry on as if nothing had happened. Programming a new match? Is that not cynical? It's inhuman. Football should never be the accomplice of dictators.
Y jugaron en este estadio.
And they played in this stadium, while the scars of thousands of Chileans were still unhealed. Those who were prisoners here like me. What on earth was FIFA thinking?
Le Stade national de Santiago va retrouver sa première vocation et de camp de détention, redevenir terrain de sport. Paradoxalement, c'est pour accueillir l'équipe de football du RSS. Celle-ci doit rencontrer l'équipe du Chili le 21 novembre en Coupe du Monde, mais les Soviétiques ont demandé que ce match ait lieu dans un autre pays d'Amérique latine, sinon ils déclareront forfait.
A nosotros nos informaron.
We were told at midnight on Saturday that the Soviet team wasn't coming.
Tonto que he visto en mi vida.
It was the most stupid thing I've ever seen in my life. We took the pitch, and there was no one there, no opponent. The ref blew the whistle, and we took the ball up and scored. And the ref awarded it.
Ni del barrio.
Even in a district street game, you don't do that. It was the most ridiculous show there has ever been. And I was a performer in it. A Chilean writer, Pessoa Veliz, wrote about it. I was in the stadium that day, along with about 30,000 other people. But there was no one behind the goals. And when they scored, they went towards the area where there was no one. Everyone wondered why. Everyone but me. I knew they were dedicating the goal to those who should have been there. It really moved me. That writer and I knew who they had dedicated the goal to. (1974). It was just before the World Cup in West Germany. I was already playing for a club in Spain, and when I came back for the national team game, I arrived at the airport and my mother was there. She wasn't the same. I found her sad and introverted. I asked, "What's up? Did something happen to you?" And my dad, who was the nicest man in the world, looked sad too. And my sister was crying. I asked again, "Did something happen?" "Not here. I'll tell you at home." It's hard to talk about it. And when we got to the house, my mother said, "Come with me into my room." I was kind of nervous. She sat on the bed and said, "I was detained." "Something to do with a car?" I imagined something like that. "No, I was arrested and tortured." "Mama, stop. Don't joke about things like that." She turned into the light and showed the burns on her chest. She took me into her arms crying, and I wept like a child. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. It's a situation I just don't comprehend. Still today, I can't understand why.
They immediately took me to the torture chamber, where there was, let's say, the electric barbecue. Immediately. Totally naked. And they started what they call grill time. They attached electrodes to your whole body, vagina, mouth, ears, nipples. And they tried to get you to talk by asking you a ton of questions in the hope you'd contradict yourself. They terrorized you by saying, "Look what happened to so-and-so." Romo, for example, who was one of the most renowned and brutal torturers in Chile. He threatened me like that. He said, "I killed Lumi Videla with my bare hands. Understand this, I have no compassion for liars."
In the end, I think they were making me pay for it with what was dearest to me, my mother, just because I said no to the dictatorship.
You think it was your fault?
I think so, of course. I ask myself that every time I talk about it. Because I said no to dictatorship on every level. No to dictatorship. No to torture. So they made me pay for that with what they did to my mother. It was just before leaving for the World Cup in West Germany. One night, I heard footsteps. It was dreadful. Suddenly, the doors burst open, and there was a guy in a cape, dark glasses, and a cap. With a bitter-looking face. Dirty-looking. Hard. He started walking around, greeting the players qualified for the World Cup. And as he got close to me, very close, I put my hands behind my back. He held out his hand, and I refused to shake it. There was absolute silence that seemed to last for 1,000 hours. It can only have been a second, and he moved on. As a human being, I felt obliged, because I had an entire people behind me suffering, and no one was doing anything for them. Carlito, I was arrested. Carlito, I have a problem. Carlito, they're after me. Until I finally said, stop! No to dictatorship. At least let me protest. At the very least, let me say what I feel. When we were face to face, I said to him, you know, there are problems with the miners, with the unions, with the detainees. And this is the truth. He said, don't talk about that. I don't like talking about that. And he put his fingers in his ears. I wasn't capable of violence. I'm not a violent man. I can't stoop to the level of those who kill. I just can't.
My mother. Tortured. Who? What man? Would not want revenge for that.
As a pacifist, I can't hit someone. As a pacifist, I can't take up arms. As a pacifist, I can't march with a machine gun. Otherwise, I'd be stooping to their level.
When the ball rolls wide of the post, you can cry about that. But when you lose your freedom, you can cry or fight.
Y los ojos de la dictadura ya estaban puestos en Caselli.
He was playing in Spain, and whenever he returned to Chile, he was interviewed. He could criticize the Pinochet regime in a way that none of us could. He openly criticized the dictatorship. He had that luxury.
I was the only sportsman to say no to the plebiscite, and once again, they made me pay for it.
Sin odio, sin violencia, sin miedo. No más. Vote no.
The people have the right to elect who they want and not someone designated for them. You can't say, we'll send 2 guys to your house to get you to vote for someone else. No, the people have the right to choose their own candidates.
Por favor, ponga atención al siguiente testimonio.
Sí, yo tengo que contar una experiencia muy triste que pasé después del golpe. Yo fui secuestrada de mi hogar y llevada a un lugar desconocido, con la vista vendada, donde fui torturada y vejada brutalmente. Fueron tantas las vejaciones que yo ni siquiera las conté todas, por respeto a mis hijos, a mi esposo, a mi familia, por respeto a mí misma. las torturas físicas en realidad las pude borrar, pero las torturas morales no creo que las borre tan fácil. No se me pueden olvidar porque aún las tengo muy grabadas en mi mente y en mi corazón. Por eso yo voy a votar que no, porque para que el día de mañana todos juntos vivamos nuestra democracia libre, sin odio, con amor, con alegría, y así todo el país junto conmigo pueda cantar puro Chile, tu cielo a su lado.
Por eso mi voto es no. Porque su alegría, que ya viene, es mi alegría. Porque sus sentimientos son mis sentimientos. Porque el día de mañana podemos vivir en democracia, libre, sana, solidaria, en que todos podamos compartir. Porque esta linda señora es mi madre.
When we recorded that testimonial with my mother, who's since passed away, most of the crew were crying.
It was one of the most important parts of the campaign, which was a great campaign.
Analysts say that it convinced 7% of undecided people to vote no.
It was a sublime part of the campaign, the presence of Carlos and his mother.
Quedó un llanterío.
Several politicians from the concert of parties visited my mother's house to greet her and congratulate her. But when she passed away, not one of them showed up. That's when you realize they only visited her to play to the gallery. But I really needed them at my side, but there wasn't a single one. That's why I feel a certain resentment against the politicians in my country.
Porque esta linda señora es mi madre.
Lo más difícil es hablar.
The hardest thing is talking to your family about it. That's the hardest. But there's always something that acts as a trigger to finally enable you to talk about those things.
Recibe los votos con que Chile tú harás juro.
Decimos a todos los chilenos y al mundo que nos mira, nunca más atropellos a la dignidad humana.
Nunca más. Nunca más.
Plus jamais ça.
Never again.
Combien de fois a-t-on dit
How many times have we said those words?
Et combien de fois
And how many times have beasts returned?
N'oubliez pas.
Never forget.
N'oubliez pas les
Never forget the lessons of history. Ever since I was a little boy and I started walking, holding my father's hand, in the district where people play against a wall, against a tree, against a mound, against a big stone, against your opponent, with a football, a plastic ball, a rag ball, a paper ball, even a tin can, if there's nothing else.
challenging the Brazilian dictatorship with a democratically run football team. The Corinthians changed the course of their nation. At the centre was a revolutionary footballer, known to locals as the Doctor. Football Rebels concludes with a celebration of the life and legacy of Socrates and the Corinthians democracy movement. At this time on Al Jazeera.